Hello, my name is Shiraz and welcome to my English and Maths channel. Today we're going to have a look at this poem, Search for My Tongue by Sujata Bhatt. Um, Before we have a look at the poem, I would like you to have a look at these pictures and start thinking about them. So the first picture here is there are a lot of different languages, and each and every language represents an identity and certain culture. Okay, and it would be interesting to find out in which language you dream. If you speak maybe two or three languages. Okay, so and this picture over here, you've got an apple, fresh and nice, and the other apple is rotten or has started to rot, and it is because no one has eaten that apple and it's been there for so many days. Okay. Moving on to this picture here, you've got the flag of the USA. So imagine yourself living in the USA, and trying to find your identity, because over there you have to talk, you have to speak in English. Okay, so it's you wouldn't be using your native language over there. Okay, and the last picture is the most important picture. And you can see there's a plant, and it is coming out of the ground, so it's fresh and new plant. And this is the image that Sujata has used in this poem. All right, let's have a look at the poem now. So we'll be talking about different things. I would like you to get familiar with these terms if you don't know them. Right, search for my tongue. Okay, so the word search here, you search something that you have lost somewhere. So this is, there's a sense of loss in the title of the poem. And the word tongue, it represents so many different things. It's a symbol in this poem. Uh, So the tongue stands for your language, your identity, your culture. So it has a lot of things. So search for my tongue is it's a beautiful title, and it tells you a lot about the poem. So you ask me what I mean by saying I have lost my tongue. So the poem starts like a dialogue, like a conversation. So it has a conversational quality in this poem. It is quite easy language. Uh, so you can hear the speaker talking to you, and you are listening to the speaker. So these two skills here, speaking and listening. Um, these are quite obvious in this poem, and we'll also talk about the other two skills later on. Okay, so you ask me. So it seems like the reader, or someone is asking the poet what I mean by saying I have lost my tongue. So it looks like the poet has already said that I have lost my tongue. Okay, so she's, maybe she said it to someone, and then that person probably doesn't understand what she means. So it's like a, conversational quality, like a dialogue. So you ask me what I mean by saying I have lost my tongue. Uh, so we can predict that the rest of the poem would possibly be about losing my tongue. So it's not only the tongue, it's the language, the culture, and identity. All the things associated with the language. Okay, so I ask you. So there's a counter question here. Okay, so the poet asks the listener. I ask you, what would you do if you had two tongues in your mouth? So what would you do if you had two tongues? So this is a second conditional. It's a hypothetical situation, and the poet wants the reader to imagine, if he or she had two tongues in their mouth, what they would do. It's kind of very hard to imagine having two tongues in your mouth. So it is, almost impossible to have two tongues in your mouth, isn't it? So similarly, it is quite difficult to belong to two different identities or two different cultures. So one of the two cultures has to be the stronger one. You have stronger ties to one of the cultures. So the poet asks the reader, what would you do if you had two tongues in your mouth? And then lost the first one. So the first one here is the native language, your first language. So if you lost the first one, which is, the mother tongue, so it is your first language. So if you lost the first one, what would you do? It's kind of a very big question. If you lost your identity or your culture, you're kind of someone who doesn't belong anywhere and could not really know the other. So, no matter what, how much fluent you are in the second language, it is, almost impossible to know the other, which is the foreign tongue, like your mother tongue. So it's almost impossible. So even if you've been living in a foreign country for so many years, it is almost impossible for you to know the other tongue. And the other tongue, over here, obviously the tongue stands for identity and culture. No matter how much close you are to that culture, you don't belong there. You could not use them both together. So now the poet makes it clear that you could not use them both together. It is impossible for you to use both of the languages at the same time, the same way that it is impossible to have two tongues in your mouth. Even if you thought that way. So even if you thought that you can, but it is actually not possible to belong to two different cultures and identities. You've got to have only one identity. And if you lived in a place you had to speak a foreign tongue. So now, for example, if you're living in the USA or maybe in the UK, where you have to speak a foreign tongue because you have moved to that country, your mother tongue would rot. So now this idea of rotting, because you are not using your mother tongue on a regular basis, so what would happen is it would start rotting. Rotting is a very, very strong image, and it's a very dark image, isn't it? That your mother tongue would start rotting because you're not using it. Rot and die in your mouth. So there's a repetition here. So rot and then rot again. So the poet is using this technique of repetition to stress that your mother tongue would rot, and then eventually it would die in your mouth. Okay, so this is a very very difficult situation that you're kind of losing your culture and identity because you're not speaking your mother tongue until you have to spit it out. So spit it out is once again very strong image here, and you spit something out which is disgusting. So like phlegm. You don't want to keep phlegm in your mouth, so you have to spit it out. So this rote here, it can also be it can also mean that you forget. So you start forgetting your language, and eventually it dies in your mouth. So for example, you go to a foreign country to live there, and then you get married, for example, and both of the parents speak first language, but the children obviously do not speak first language, or maybe they do, but they would speak more in English, and then the next generation would possibly speak only English. So the language eventually would die in that generation. Okay, so this is not a very positive picture over here. Okay, so the mother tongue here is now rotting. This is a very, very important image here. This metaphor of the plant. So the mother tongue is the plant which is rotting because of the foreign tongue. So the foreign tongue is like a parasite or a weed which is eating away the mother tongue. Okay, so this metaphor runs, this metaphor of parasite and weed and the plant, it runs throughout the poem. Okay, so you spit it out. I thought I spit it out. So because the poet is not using that language on a regular basis, so it has started roting, so she has started forgetting it, and then she thinks that it has died. And I thought I spit it out. So it's kind of, spit it out is very, it's kind of something inferior. So imagine this mother tongue is inferior. It doesn't have that status in that new country. So it is considered something inferior, and the foreign tongue is superior. Or maybe this is considered by the because it's spoken by the foreigners, so it is obviously inferior language in that country. So I thought I spit it out, but overnight while I dream. Okay, so now the dream starts here. So she thought that she had forgotten it, and she was not using that language. But then overnight, nighttime, while I dream. So when she dreams, what happens is, now this part is very much important. So let's try to read it because it is in the poem. So we've got to read it. So and she's written in a foreign script as well. Okay, so mune hotoke aki jibin aki bhasha mitunke naki che. So even though we don't know how to read it, but we must read it because it is in the poem, and it is this language, Gujarati language, that she is dreaming in. She doesn't dream in English. She dreams in Gujarati, which is her native language. And it's like you've got English here, and then Gujarati, and then English again. So it's like a sandwich, and we have to read this Gujarati because she has written it. So we have all the four skills in this poem. So reading, writing, speaking, and listening. remember the poem has a conversational quality. So, Sujata has very cleverly incorporated all the four skills in this language. So, all these four skills make up the language. And for her, Gujarati, this language has the same status as English. That is why she has included Gujarati in her poem. Okay, so we're not going to read it, but if you understand Gujarati, you're more than welcome to read it. But it's just there to show that it has equal status for her. So it's like she has two identities. Okay. So when she dreams, what happens is it grows back. So this idea of growing, like growing a plant. So the plant is growing. This plant is obviously the mother tongue, and the foreign tongue is the parasites or the weeds, which were trying to eat away the first language. So it grows back. So it looks like the the first language has had started rotting, and but then it grows back. So this metaphor of plant. Okay, a stump of a shoot. So shoot is the new plant, and a stump is the bottom part of a plant or tree, which is left in the ground when maybe the plant has been cut, or maybe it's fallen. So there's still some part of that plant, of that language, which is left over, and then from there's a shoot, there's a new plant that grows longer. So grows. So you see that repetition of the word grows. Uh, so she's trying to stress that it grows back, it grows longer, it grows moist. Moist, it has water, and water is a symbol of life. Grows strong veins. So veins, the veins in the plants. So it gets life. So it becomes very much alive. So this language, this first language, is now coming back to life. It ties the other tongue in knots. So this other tongue is the foreign tongue, and it is the first language. So now what happens is there is some interesting imagery here. Is the imagery of battle, or like a fight. So it ties the other tongue in knots. So this first language is now kind of fighting the invader. So we had a look before that the invader was eating away the first language, but now the invader is being defeated because it's being tied in knots. Uh, so there's this idea of colonial power and independence as well. Which is very interesting here. So the bud opens, so the new bud. So it's this extended metaphor of plant and growing and buds. The bud opens in my mouth. So once again, repetition, and it's a contrast with your mother tongue would rot. Now the mother tongue is not rotting; it's actually opening, and it opens in my mouth. As opposed to rotting in my mouth. It pushes the other tongue aside. So the other tongue again is there's repetition, a lot of repetition here to stress. So this other tongue is the second language, the foreign tongue. So there's a bit of of a fight here. So it the mother tongue pushes the foreign tongue aside to make some space and to become alive again. Every time I think I've forgotten. So it's like a journey for the poet. It's like a form of thinking for her that every time I think I've forgotten. So I've forgotten my mother tongue. Every time I think, what happens is I think I've lost the mother tongue. It blossoms out of my mouth. So blossoms once again, the flower and nature, and it's beautiful. The idea of beauty and being eternal. So it's the mother tongue has a lasting nature. It can never die. It can never rot. You might forget it for a while, but it blossoms again. Um, and it looks like the poet has changed her mind. In the beginning, she said that the mother tongue would rot, but now she says that it blossoms out of my mouth. So blossoms is present simple, which is true for past, present, and future. So uh, it's a very strong statement that it blossoms out of my mouth, so it can never ever die. And this is why, in dreams or in subconscious mind, we use our first language, so the language still lives. Okay, so it's a beautiful poem about language and identity and culture, the things that you belong to in the first place. And the poem is very much relatable to those who live in foreign countries, for example, USA, UK, Germany, France, or any other country where you're kind of forced to use um, the foreign language, okay, but the first language never ever dies, okay, because those are your roots and your culture and your identity, which can never ever die. Okay, great. Thank you very much indeed for watching my video. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the comments box. Thank you. Bye bye.